Well, here we are on Super Bowl Sunday, and we have an early Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast so that, well, we don't want to take the audience away from the Super Bowl now, do we? And we will be talking about, of course, this approaching storm system for late Monday night into Tuesday afternoon. And it will take a look down the road because the pattern does actually look rather busy over time. So, fasten your seatbelts and get ready for a bumpy ride on today's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. Brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system and join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is on the descriptor to this podcast, and use the coupon code Winter2324. And if you do, you'll get
a big 10% off, even on Super Bowl Sunday. Yeah.
Yes. So I didn't. I should mention to you, Joe, that I did get. CBS was in contact with me. They were thanking me profusely for rescheduling the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast because they thought that we would just take too much of their audience away and keep their ratings down. Should we, air during this evening? I have to tell you a couple of things with this particular system. I mean, literally.
You're not impressed.
Well, no. I'm trying to find the right words to say this. So, I took a pretty in-depth look at the NAM today because this is the first period. This is the first run that actually goes out far enough, so it takes you through the entire day Tuesday. Now, I for inland areas, and I'm thinking north of 287 and points northward. This could still be a mostly, yes, for you. I think this could certainly be mostly a snow event, and perhaps in some areas a heavy snow event. I'm not so convinced, though, that on the southern edge of that, like around New York City and Long Island, particularly the North Shore, the NAM numbers, they better get a little bit warmer. Let me put it that way, because if they stay the way they are now, the zero, I was looking at the T1s, the T1s, T2s, and three T3s. They're not that warm. They're zero. Actually, by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, when it's still snowing, it's zero at the low level and -5. That kind of blew me away. I looked at the 850. The zero line crashes way offshore by 1 o'clock in the afternoon Tuesday. -3 is offshore. I want to be a little careful here. This is a little bit different than, kind of looks like the other two storms back in January to some extent, but there's some important differences with the structure aloft. Plus, I was looking at the FGen over the last couple of days. That's pretty impressive. FGen that's being indicated for the coastal areas anyway, right? I mean, talking about Long Island and New York City. There's probably this narrow area where the forecast is going to be really, really tricky. You could wind up with very little or nothing. You could wind up certainly with several inches or more. The inland areas, I think, but that's an easier game. I don't know what your thoughts on this are. But by all means, share.
Well, I was impressed by the FGen. In fact, 12Z or 7 a.m. tomorrow, Tuesday morning, is when it looks like we're maxing out. But I was also impressed, Joe, by the fact that everything is moving very quickly. I mean, by the time we get to 1 o'clock in the afternoon, most of the FGen is pretty well gone. It's all but over. So whatever we put down with this particular system probably is going to have to come, I would say, sometime between like 6 in the morning and 10 in the morning on Tuesday. And it's possible that, if things really wind up, we could be seeing snow coming down in some areas at the rate of 1, maybe even 2 inches per hour. But in the same token, it's not a puffy, powdery type of snow. It looks like it's going to be that sloppy, wet, clingy type of snow. So I'm thinking that for places north of 287, the general idea will be for accumulations of maybe 2 to maybe 4 inches. The heaviest snows will probably be up in Sullivan and Ulster and northern Dutchess County, where I think it'll be somewhere more like 4 to 6. And in elevated areas, and we're talking about, let's say, above 500 feet. I happen to be at about 500-foot elevation. Um, so if you're high up, there may be some spots, especially notable in Ulster and Sullivan counties, where there could be as much as 8 inches of snow. But again, further south down toward the coast, I'm thinking that well, I haven't yet made my official snow map, and it will be going up shortly on my Facebook page. But I think a broad swath of at least 1 to 2 inches, which would encompass also New York City and also Long Island as well. And the other thing that I think to consider, Joe, is the fact that um, we have not seen temperatures go below freezing since early Thursday morning. Let's say around 8 or 9 o'clock. They've been above
Right.
freezing constantly, and so for paved surfaces, it's going to take a while for that snow, that slushy snow, even with the dynamics involved, that between that 6 and 10 a.m. period, it's going to take a while for that snow to start to stick to paved surfaces. So while, let's say, grassy surfaces, trees, and car tops may get the full extent of whatever accumulation we're calling for, the paved surfaces may start out more wet than white, and then eventually they'll start picking up a bit of snow and get a bit slick. But I'm really not looking. I saw the Weather Service put out a winter storm watch, and they were talking about in some cases 6 to 9 inches and even higher amounts. I think that's gone a little bit overboard. I don't see that, especially with one, the fast movement of the system, and also the marginally cold temperatures, especially at the onset. And there may be some sleet at the onset for many localities, snow, sleet, even plain rain, before again things start to rev up and the colder air begins to get dragged in, and we start seeing some snow accumulations. So that's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking now.
Well, the dynamics here are pretty impressive, and I've seen situations like this over the years where somebody winds up getting a surprise. So I just want to be a little bit cautious. I agree with you to an extent about the fact that paved surfaces are probably going to have a tougher time. On the other hand, I could also envision where we could get into some of the uh, where the stronger dynamics are, the big vertical motions that are being indicated, that somebody winds up getting into an area where snow is coming down at about 2 to 3 inches an hour. That could fairly quickly compensate for the warm, the warmer, more the ground. I, it's hard for me to bring that up because every time somebody brings the warm ground thing up, I just want to roll my eyes. In general, not in this particular case necessarily, but just in general, they look at a system coming and they're thinking, oh, okay, well, the warm ground and the sun angle and all the rest of it, and just like, you know what, leave me alone. I don't want to hear any of that nonsense.
Well, it
Um,
is. We have had situations where we've had 60+ degree temperatures followed the next day by near blizzard conditions, and that's absolutely true. But also, those 60-degree temperatures were relatively short-lived. I mean, we had maybe a couple of days of abnormally mild temperatures, then we go boom right into
Well, and
uh,
also in the one instance you're thinking of is the February storm from a few years ago, where we were actually near 80 the day before, but when it started snowing, the temperature got was already down to 19. So that was, you have to have a good shot of Arctic, there's Arctic air coming in on the backside. That's one thing. You don't really have that here. You have, in a sense, you have what you have is there's too much warm air ahead of it and not enough cold air behind it. Because once the low pulls offshore and the upper low pulls offshore, you're going to have the cold air collapsing in, and it does do that at the high levels. But you really don't have quality low level cold air coming in underneath. You've got some, but it's not quality cold air. So you're going to have to do it with dynamics. You're going to have to do it with it snowing hard enough for a long enough period of time. And as you mentioned, in terms of snow accumulations, I've got the snow map up there that the Weather Service in their forecast. I mean, they're going for a foot plus in northeastern Pennsylvania, up in the Catskills, as you mentioned, Sullivan County. Mostly north of Route 84. You start to get into some double-digit numbers. Northern Connecticut, they've got a coating to a couple of inches from I guess if you draw a line along the Route 1 corridor northwest in New Jersey and across Long Island, this is the one area that I'm a little bit concerned about, where dynamics, this whole section in here, you know, I think that's one area where I want to be a little bit cautious with regards to the dynamics. with this particular situation.
I agree. I agree. And I do want to say or stress that elevation is really going to play a big role in numbers here. Again, the higher up you go, the more likely you're going to. I mean, like case in point, I go back to last March, March 14th of last year. Again, I live at a 500-foot elevation. And with a storm that we had on the 14th of March last year, I got 11.9 inches. However, down toward, let's say, Cortland, where it's about 400 feet lower, the amounts there were only about an inch or two. And so elevation can sometimes play a big role in how much who's going to get. The problem with these snow maps is the fact that they are all one-dimensional, Joe. I mean, like if you start trying to make snow maps based upon elevation, you're going to end up with a lot of different types of contours
Oh,
and
it's crazy. It's
it's
crazy.
crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, we'll see what happens. Again, I absolutely agree with you that we're going to get quite a bit of dynamical energy here. Again, during that interval from about 6 a.m. Tuesday to 10 a.m. Tuesday, you look out that window and the snow will be coming down in some cases hot and heavy. But again, depending upon where you happen to be, your elevation, your temperatures, it could really, a lot of that could end up, especially again on paved surfaces, not amounting to all that much. And in other cases, it could be coming down, and accumulating the rate of an inch or two per hour. But it looks like it's going to be, at least in this rather warm month of February so far, the first real threat of snow that we've had so far in this particular month to date.
Well, the Weather Service is going. I was actually surprised they put the winter storm watches up as early as they did. I don't know, maybe they thought because it was a weekend and Super Bowl Sunday and all the rest of it, that they'd go with it early. They're going mostly in central Pennsylvania, 6 to 8, Altoona 4, State College 6, Williamsport 8. Further east, you start to get to Scranton with about 5 to 7 there, but they've got 11-inch amounts knocked off in a few places in northeastern Pennsylvania. Same for the Catskills. Looks like Hunter Mountain, they've got 13 to 14. Kingston, it looks like a 10 there. Basically 8 or more in northern Connecticut, northward across much of Massachusetts. They even give Boston 10, Worcester 12, Springfield 10. Um, Providence looks like 7, 11 in northeastern Connecticut, Hartford about 9 or 10. And then, as I said, the lower numbers on the southern end, south central PA, parts of southeast PA, maybe north and west of I-95, looking at a coating to an inch or so. Again, I'm going to just keep an eye on what I want to see on the next dam run is whether um, those T1, those temperatures, those T1s, those T2s come up a little bit, or do they stay the same, or maybe even nudge down a little bit? That'll be interesting to see, with regards to that. And by the way, this was my early call snow forecast that I did. I actually did this on Friday. By the way, I know a few people said my volume went down all of a sudden. I think maybe that's because I pulled back away from the mic, so I'm trying to stay close. So hopefully the my volume is better now. Um, but here's the early call snow forecast that I did on Friday. I did it Friday night. I probably will want to tuck in, pull up the trace the 2 inches up a little bit. I had New York City and Long Island with the two, basically at 2, and I had a 4-inch line um, just north and west of New York City, northern Westchester County, running along I-95 in Connecticut. That's where I had the 4-inch line, and I have a band of 6 inches plus for those areas you mentioned. Although I put you in the 6-inch band, Joe, in Dutchess County.
Okay.
I
All right.
probably could. I probably, if I had to do this right now, which I'm not going to change it. There's no point in me changing this now because I'm about to. We're getting close to the time we're going to make a final call. So tomorrow morning, I'll probably do a final call of some sort. I probably would, on the northern fringe of this, I probably would put the 6-inch line further north, closer to where the 4 is, maybe even a little bit further north than where the 4 is, and push the 2 up a little bit, push the trace line a little bit. So, pulling in from the south, pulling up, stretching it out a bit on the northern end.
Well, I think again for much of the lower Hudson Valley, I'm thinking 2 to 4. You might want to throw in a 5 for those places like in northern sections of Orange County, which are above 1,000 feet, and maybe even a touch more than that. But generally speaking, 2 to 4 south of 287, down into New York and across much of Long Island. I'm thinking at least 1 to 2 slushy inches,
Right.
and you have to go much further. You have to go a bit further south. Let's say down to 78 to get to coating to 1 inch. But I think basically we're thinking of along the same lines, Joe. We're not thinking of a paralyzing, crippling snowfall. And again, I think a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
that
that it's not that it is not going to be.
it's going to be a
We can say
hard.
that for sure.
It's going to be a quick, hard hitting system. And again, the worst part of it, for those of you who are working or planning to go to school, I already can see a lot of schools either delaying or closing come Tuesday morning. But I think that period, which encompasses the morning commute, the morning drive, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., that's when we're going to be seeing the worst of this, and that's when the snow is going to be coming down, especially if we have those big white slushy flakes. And if it's coming down at a moderate to heavy, that visibility is going to be cut down to a mile or less at times. So it's again, keep that in the back of your mind, and that's what's going to be greeting you not tomorrow morning, but Tuesday morning with this system as it rides on through. And also, Joe, the other thing is that the storm kind of fades out over West Virginia and resurfaces. It looks like somewhere either off Delmarva or near South Jersey. Of course, you don't want the storm to be too far north because that helps to bring in some warm air advection from the ocean. And as you can see also on the map that you're displaying right now, we have that stripe of purple, which seems to indicate some sleet. You started the
I don't
show
know
off
if I don't know if that's sleet, Joe. That might
heavy snow. Is that
yeah,
just
the color because the color of the purple. I wish the colors were a little bit different. But I think that might because we've seen this when it's got that really that super purple, let's call it. That might be a band of heavy snow, and that's what they has, right over New York City and Long Island. Again, this is the HRRR, and I'm just going to caution everybody that the HRRR is notorious for doing stuff like this early on, and then when you get close to the time frame, it changes, in a way that a short range model should not change. So this is to be used with caution. I'm just going to look on Pivotal because the that heavy snow area, if it is heavy snow, is easier to see. So I'm going to take a look at that and
the other
see
thing
what.
is that the compared to the NAM, the North American model, the global models, the GFS and especially the European, if you check out the thermodynamics and see where the positioning of the 32-degree line is during the height of the storm, they've got both of those global models have the 32-degree line even north of where I am. Whereas the NAM is much chillier, much colder, and has it further to the south. So I'm not sure which is going to be correct. But again, that may be one thing, but that's at I believe the 2 meter altitude. Of course, higher up, the 32 line goes further south, and you end up with a colder environment and a better chance for snow. So whatever,
Yeah,
it's
I can't, from what I'm looking at the NAM, and I just pulled up a sound. I'm sorry, the HRRR on Pivotal. I just pulled up a sounding, and I mean, it looks like there's. I mean, it looks like that it could be wet. It could be wet snow versus sleet. It's very close. I mean, the zero is literally, the temperature profile line lays just inside the freezing line. So I'm gonna guess that that's heavy snow rather than sleet. But you know, either way, I mean, that's where the boundary is. And by the way, if we check the NAM model out, you see how it kind of goes to that dark blue snow after. Actually, it comes in faster, which is kind of interesting, and it goes to that dark blue snow by 7 a.m., just barely north and west of the coast, and then it all collapsed southward from there, going through the middle and latter part of the afternoon. And then, as we, earlier were talking about that FGen, I mean, I, you wonder when I was looking at this yesterday with the deepening low and the redevelopment, is somebody going to see a thunderstorm out of this?
not out of the question when you have the contour lines so tightly packed together, and also they are reflective of, as I just said a few moments ago, a weakening storm over West Virginia and a new storm firing up off of the mid-Atlantic coast. So that sometimes is the benchmark of an intensifying storm is some rumbles of thunder. And so don't be surprised. And if you end up in that zone where you've got some convection, oh, most definitely you're going to get 1 to 2 per hour and maybe even higher than that for a short while in terms of the.
Um, Leon Probitsky, thank you for hitting Super Chat, the most appreciated. And Robert Lomnicki, also thank you for hitting the Super Chat tip jar. And David Schwartz, also hitting the Super Chat tip jar. What kind of snow ratios for New York City and Long Island? 8 to 1, I think, is probably a fair, a fair number. 8 to 1 for me feels good.
It'll be good snowball packing snow. I mean, it's not going to be that puffy talcum powder snow, obviously. And of course, if we have that, the with higher ratios, we'd have a better chance at higher accumulations. But this is going to be that slushy, clingy type of snow. If for nothing else, if you have a lot of trees like I have, which obviously don't have any leaves right now, but if you're in that type of zone, expect to wake up on Tuesday morning and see kind of a Currier and Ives type appearance to the landscape, because that snow is going to cling rather readily to grass, to tree branches, to car tops. But again, maybe not necessarily the paved surfaces, at least not immediately, because again, let's see, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So far, Joe, my driveway and my local street has been above freezing. I've got this device, Renata picked it up, where you can point at the ground and get the temperature of the ground or the surface. And the last 3 mornings, when I've gone out and taken the dog out, I've taken that device out, and the temperature of my driveway and of also the street have been averaging between 36 and 38 degrees. So if it starts to snow late Monday night, early Tuesday morning, when it starts to snow, there ain't no way that the snow is going to stick immediately to that. It's going to take a while. And again, with the sheer dynamics that we're anticipating after 6 a.m., that's when the snow will begin to stick to paved surfaces. But initially, it may have a tough time getting a foothold with those rather mild temperatures.
All right. You the folks on the chat board saying it's the wrong color purple. I don't have the best of I'm not good at delineating colors very well. So if you're going to say it's sleet, then I'll go with you and say it's sleet. Okay. Winter storm warnings are up right now for Northwest Texas, eastern New Mexico, uh, parts of western Colorado. I'm sorry, western Oklahoma, and we've got advisories that extended to Southwest Missouri. The storm system getting underway now in the south, of course, is going to create some other problems there with severe weather. We have actually severe thunderstorm and tornado watches as of 12. Well, it's coming up on 12:25 Eastern time for Northwest Louisiana and Southeast Texas. We've got flood watches up for parts of Eastern Alabama, the northern half of Georgia, and much of the northern half of South Carolina into Southwest North Carolina. And excuse me, of course, you see the winter storm watches from West Central PA, eastward across northern New Jersey, the lower and middle Hudson Valley, except the southernmost part of the Hudson Valley, um, Connecticut, Rhode Island, except right along the immediate south coast of Connecticut, all of Massachusetts, southern Vermont, southern New Hampshire, and one county in southwestern Maine. On the satellite loop, there's a lead, you've got this subtropical jet that it started showing up late last week, and it's running from the Pacific across Mexico, the Gulf states, and then pushed all these clouds up into the northeast. There's actually some rain uh, touching southern New Jersey on the radar and points southward that's going out ahead of this. And then, of course, you could see the rotation back into Oklahoma and Texas, and that's with the weather system. So the atmosphere, Joe, is pretty much priming here for this weather system. Every time we've seen this winter, every time we've seen this subtropical jet, um, you know, become part of the equation, it has led to some rather strong storm systems, and this one might still it may wind up being that way eventually when it's offshore.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed on all counts.
Okay. Radar at the moment, actually is, from There's some stuff aloft over New Jersey. There's some stuff aloft in parts of Pennsylvania. There's some steadier precipitation, southern Delmarva Peninsula to southeast Virginia, and then that extends down into north and South Carolina. Most of what's there ahead of it is on the light side. So there's some, there's sort of lead disturbance that is going out ahead of this main one. And you see the severe thunderstorms are popping out across Louisiana and into East Texas. And then arcing back, you've got this arm that goes back to where the upper low is in northwest Texas, where we are seeing some snow. Let me just bring up the Storm Prediction Center and looking at their risk areas for today. We've got enhanced risk from from southeast Texas northeastward into central Alabama. That, by the way, comes with a 5%, a 10% tornado risk in that enhanced risk area, and 5% in the slight risk that noses up into western Georgia. Marginal risk pushes a little further east after that. And then for tomorrow, we're looking at a really large area of slight risk and 5% tornado risk in the southeast, just about the whole state of Georgia and South Carolina and Alabama in that slight risk zone. So certainly, if you're going to be dealing with a deepening low with all these dynamics we've been talking about on the cold side, you've got dynamics on the warm side too with respect to severe weather in the southeast. And then we go to day 3, and this is for Tuesday when the low is on the coast. No thunderstorms are forecast, so that's done. As far as precip amounts go, we're looking at several inches or more in the southeast. Looking at that area of orange is actually 4 or 5 inches being indicated for parts of northeast Georgia into western South Carolina and also in southern Georgia, a little gap in between. But the 1.5 inches of liquid goes up to the southern part of the Delmarva. In the snow area, we're talking anywhere from 3/4 of an inch to some places about an inch or a little bit more across Pennsylvania to southern and southeastern New England. That goes all the way back down into the lower Mississippi Valley, picks up again along the Gulf Coast, and active in the west with 3/4 of an inch to an 1.5 inches plus from San Diego all the way up the coast up to Seattle. WPC, I'm sorry, Joe, I'm just kind of running through this really quick. WPC, looking at, I always like to look at that 50% line for a good place to put the my 2-inch line, and it's not the darkest blue, but the next level down. So that cuts across northern Hunterdon County in New Jersey, probably just somewhere just south of Allentown in Pennsylvania, and going southwest from there, maybe near Harrisburg. But then as you go northeast, it cuts across Staten Island, northernmost Staten Island, over New York City, and the North Shore of Long Island in that chance for at least 2. And of course, you see where the 90 to 100% is. And actually, I'll jump over the probability for at least 8. And this is where northwest New Jersey, I would say halfway between 287 and 84 is the 40 to 50% line for at least 8. So WPC, Joe, is pretty bullish on snow amounts, particularly as you start going northward, western Orange County, up northward to Sullivan County, northeastern PA, northern Connecticut, north of Route 84, into those White Mountains in the Berkshires and the White Mountains in the north in Vermont, New Hampshire. So they're kind of bullish here, and Boston is in that 50% or higher probability for at least 8.
Yeah, I don't know why. People accuse me of being a snow hater. I'm not a snow hater. I try to look at things straight down the middle, and for whatever reason, I think I agree with you. I think they're being a bit bullish on their snow accumulation amounts this go around. I was hoping you were going to go to 12 and see what they had for that.
I certainly could do that. As far as 12, they've got northernmost and northeasternmost PA looks like into the Catskills. They have the 50 to 60% probability for at least 12. The darker blue is 40 to 50%, and they have that across Massachusetts, southern Vermont, and New Hampshire. So that's the probability for at least 12.
Okay, that's good. Well, we'll see.
Right.
I will agree to the extent that northern half of Sullivan County and portions of Ulster County where that's up into the Catskill region. We're talking about elevations of 2, 3, 4,000 feet. I could see up there, six to eight, 6 to 10 inches of snow out of this. So we'll see what happens when it's all over, said and done. And again, I think, Joe, the worst of this is going to be pretty well behind us by noon or 1 o'clock
Yeah.
on Tuesday, based upon especially the movement of the FGen. I mean, the FGen is really going to. It's very tight, very concentrated, but it's also shifting across very, very quickly.
I would tend to think that if the faster this goes, the higher chances for a higher end snowfall, if only because of the fact that this southern stream feature remains very separate. Now there is a northern shortwave that's coming down, and if if the southern stream feature were slower, you'd risk a phasing and a storm system that would go way to the north, way west and north. So as long as this thing is moving along faster, that again, that might it's something you got. I think that's something you have to watch in terms of the southern end of the accumulation line as to whether there's going to wind up being a surprise there. And the fact that the upper low tracks very close to New York City and Long Island is also another thing to put in there is a little bit of caution. Now, once this trough pulls out, we do seem to be in a colder flow, and there's energy that's going to be dropping down from Canada. There's also some southern energy that's in play here for later this week and going into the next weekend. But it does seem like we're probably going to have some more chances for snow down the road. Although I have to honestly tell you, I haven't really spent a whole lot of time looking at the long range. So just really quickly, so here's our system for tomorrow. As Joe said, the primary goes up into West Virginia, actually goes up into western West Virginia or southwestern Virginia, and then suddenly pops up again in Chesapeake Bay to the Delaware coast or in Delaware Bay or just off Delaware Bay. So that redevelopment position is going to be really important. That moves on out to the northeast. The low gets down into the 970s when it's southeast of Cape Cod, passing very close to the 40 and 70 benchmark. And then it moves out. We'll get some colder air behind it for Wednesday into Thursday. It's not crazy cold, but it's just just cold enough to bring temperatures back down. I think close to average. Then there's some kind of diver that comes in on Friday with some colder air behind it, and then you see the southern energy that the GFS is picking up on. Actually, also the Icon model is picking up on this as well, bringing some snow around for maybe later Friday night into Saturday. We'll see how that plays out in the coming days, and then it turns colder right behind that.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned about the fact it's not crazy cold. I mean,
Yeah.
there's been some talk on social media. Oh, it's going to turn very cold. Finally, we're going to turn the corner and it's going to get very cold here. No, it's just going to turn colder compared to what we have been dealt. My God, we have had so far this month of February has been exceedingly warm. And David Fuller asking, "Where's Joe Rayo's snow map?" Well, there have been reasons why I've not had a chance to do a snow map yet. It will go up on my Facebook page later this afternoon, probably in the next hour or two. I will put up a snow map. Circumstances beyond my control yesterday and early today around the house, doing some stuff that's been happening here at the home base has been keeping me from. Let's just say that there's some things that were higher on the priority level as opposed to sitting down and concentrating and doing a map. But now I've got an hour or two ahead of me, and I'll be able to do that and get it up for all of you. And you're not the first one, David. I mean, on the Facebook page, people have been saying the same thing. Where's your snow map? Where is it? So I didn't have any idea, Joe, that so many people were anxious to see, a bit of my artistry here.
Well, Joe, being that it's Super Bowl Sunday, yes.
102.
Um, being that it's Super Bowl Sunday, CBS was very interested in seeing a snow map today because they want to make sure that people get to their parties so that they can watch the Super Bowl.
Right.
But I'm always willing to give those small linear television, the linear TV networks like CBS, ABC, and ABC a little bit of slack. I'll give them a little bit of room. I don't want to take their we don't want to take their audience away. All right, so just wondering, any final thoughts here? By the way, you might as well wait for the European to come out because that's going to come out within 20 minutes. Wait for the European to come out and then do your snowman if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, yeah, that's certainly well. These are fast European. Unfortunately, on tropical tidbits, they give you two versions: the fast version, which goes at 24-hour increments, and the slower version, but that won't be out until after about 2 or 2:15. So I'm not going to wait that long. But
Right.
the one change I might make already, I said for a broad swath of the lower Hudson Valley, north of 287, I'd go 2 to 4. I might actually go 2 to 5. 2 to 5, by the way, is the greatest all-purpose snow range that you could possibly give for any one area. And the only reason why I might bump it from 2 to 4 to 2 to 5 is to take into account again places like north of 84 in northern Orange County, which is at a higher elevation and may pick up a bit more than other places. I remember when I was at News 12 for many years, Joe, and Rich Von Olin was always pulling his hair out because we'd put out a great snow map and people from northern Orange County would always complain, well, you said, well, I was only going to get 4 inches. I got more like 7, and we finally determined that it was the elevation factor that was causing.
Well, they
Uh,
get lift
yeah, they
on a
do.
northeast wind. They get lift, and that
So
helps the
I would go.
cause.
So right now I would go, even though the snow map is not officially made yet, I would go like 2 to 5 north of 287, and in portions of Sullivan and Ulster County, 5 to 7, and with some of the highest elevations, maybe going upwards to 10 or even 12 inches of snow. So if you want snow and you go up in a high elevation, who's our friend up there in the Catskills who
Oh,
is
it's Chuck Cardillo.
Argillo? So Chuck, if you like snow, you may get quite a bit. I think, especially so come early Tuesday when that area of FGen is moving across. And don't be surprised again that you may hear a rumble or two of that. They didn't have any general thunderstorm on the day 3 map, right?
No, but maybe that we went on early today. The folks at SPC will
Oh,
be
watch.
watching right now, and might they might they do like to see what we're doing before they put their updated forecasts out later today. So we'll see what happens. All right, we're gonna wrap it up here, folks, because it's Sunday and I've got a big pot of sauce on the stove with meatballs and baby back ribs in there and some short ribs. So I got to get dinner. I'm getting hungry. So we'll
Okay.
be back tomorrow at the regular time tomorrow at 7:35 p.m. Eastern time. Have fun. If you're going to a Super Bowl party, get there safe and have a good time. And we'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.
And thank you to David Schwartz, Leon Probitsky, and Robert Lumnicki for hitting the tip jar. And Joe, we put it in the Rayovac computer, and it came out late last night. Final score for tonight's Super Bowl: Chiefs 21, 49ers 19.
Okay. Well, at least it's not the score of the election on the Mary Tyler Moore show.
Oh, Turner 85, Mitchell 23.
Exactly. See you tomorrow, folks. Bye bye.
Bye, folks.